She looked right at me, wine glass poised midair, voice smooth and sharpened like a knife. He's nothing without me. It hit the room like a slap. I felt the breath leave my lungs before I could catch it. Every head at that table turned, half in disbelief, half in amusement. No one defended me. Not even my wife, Madeline, because, well, she was the one who said it. 10 years of marriage boiled down to that one sentence, served cold in front of her colleagues, her friends, our families. A rooftop dinner under fairy lights and soft jazz. It was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it felt like a funeral for my dignity. She didn't even look away after she said it. She sipped her drink and laughed with her boss, like the remark hadn't just gutted me. Like I wasn't even there. I stared at her, really looked. This was the woman I once thought made me better. The woman who used to call me her safe place. But that night, her eyes sparkled with something else. Not love. Not even anger. Just control. What made it worse was the way people nodded along, like it was true. That I was nothing without her. That I hadn't built half this life with my bare hands. Let me take you back. When I met Madeline, she was still finishing grad school. Ambitious. Fearless. I was working 2 jobs trying to launch my own consulting firm, barely scraping by. We clicked fast. She loved my drive, or so she said. I loved her intensity. Her vision. She had this way of talking about the future like it was already written and she was just walking toward it. So I walked with her. I funded her startup idea when banks wouldn't touch it. Burned through my savings, my retirement, even took out a second mortgage to keep her dream alive when it stalled. The firm I was building? I put it on pause. Told myself love was the greater investment. For a while, it worked. Her brand exploded. She got featured in business magazines. People started whispering, next big thing, like it was a prophecy. I stayed in the background, built her website, handled her accounting, talked her through panic attacks and supplier breakdowns. I was her foundation. But somewhere along the way, being the man behind the woman turned into being invisible. I stopped being her partner and became support staff. She'd introduce me as Eli. He helps with logistics. I laughed it off, thinking it was nerves or oversight. But those little omissions became a pattern. The first time she cut me out of a major decision, I chalked it up to stress. The second time, I confronted her. She told me not to take it personally, that the board thought she'd seem more authoritative making the call herself. You know how they are, she said. But it wasn't just the board. She started making jokes at my expense in front of friends, calling me Mr. Fix-It when I'd unclog the sink or patch a hole in the wall, dismissing my ideas, cutting off my stories mid-sentence to jump in with hers. At first, it stung. Then it numbed. The thing is, when you love someone, you explain away their cruelty as stress or ambition or personality quirks. You tell yourself they're just going through something. You don't want to believe they're going through you. That night on the rooftop, it all snapped into focus. I was seated next to her assistant, Rachel. Smart. Kind. One of the few who still looked at me like I mattered. She leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay?" I wasn't. Not even close. Madeline had just told a table full of people that I was nothing without her. She said it loud enough to echo, loud enough to stick. So I pulled out my phone. Still calm. Still smiling. Everyone was watching her, waiting for the next punchline. No one noticed me tapping through my banking app. Rachel watched though, curious, concerned. She leaned closer. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I scrolled to Rachel's name, selected her account. She didn't know I had her details. She'd submitted them 6 months ago when Madeline refused to pay her bonus, claiming budget restrictions. I'd promised I'd handle it someday. I hit transfer, typed in the amount, $10,000. I could feel Madeline's voice above me, still performing. She was mid-story, talking about her big New York pitch next month. "And of course, Eli will be there. Won't you, honey?" she said, turning to me with that same smile she used when she needed something signed. I met her eyes. My finger hovered over the button. "Actually," I said, "Rachel will be joining you instead." Silence. Madeline blinked. "What?" I turned my phone screen toward Rachel and let her see the transfer confirmation. Her jaw dropped. Everyone else craned their necks. "She deserves it," I said, voice steady. "For every time you made her stay late and called it character building. For every bonus you promised and never paid. For every idea you stole and pitched as your own." Madeline's face cracked, barely, but enough for me to see it. "I'm done being nothing," I said quietly. Consider this the start of something new. And with that, I stood up. My chair scraped against the wood floor. People whispered. Madeline called my name, her voice finally unsure. But I didn't look back. The next morning, she stormed into the apartment like a hurricane that had forgotten where home was. I was at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee, calm, steady, like I hadn't just detonated a decade's worth of illusions in front of everyone we knew. She didn't speak at first, just stood in the doorway, breathing hard, eyes wild. You embarrassed me, she said finally, her voice sharp with disbelief more than anger. In front of my team. In front of my investors. I sipped my coffee. You humiliated me, Eli. No, I said. You did that all by yourself. Her mouth opened to reply, but she hesitated. She wasn't used to this version of me. Quiet, composed, unmoved. Normally, I'd scramble to fix it, to apologize, to make her feel safe even after she'd cut me down. But not this time. Something had cracked inside me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to glue it back together. She walked closer, arms folded. What was the point of that little stunt? Transferring my money to Rachel like some petty power move? Your money, I repeated, laughing softly. Interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. Everything we've built, my company, which I funded, which I managed, which I protected when the IRS came knocking last year, because your books were a mess. I set the mug down. You know how many nights I stayed up fixing your mistakes? How many deals I kept from falling apart because I still believed in you, even after you stopped believing in us? She flinched, just a little, but she didn't apologize. She didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, she narrowed her eyes. So what now? You think you're some kind of martyr? Walking away makes you what, heroic? Noble? No, I said, walking past her. It just makes me free. I spent that day calling the people who actually mattered, my own clients, the ones I'd let drift while managing her empire. I reactivated old accounts, revived dormant LLCs under my name. I wasn't starting from scratch. I was starting from experience. Later that afternoon, Rachel sent me a message. You didn't have to do that. But thank you. I replied. I did. You deserved it. She never saw your value. I did. That night, Madeline tried to pretend nothing had changed. She cooked, badly, and asked if I wanted to join her for dinner, her tone laced with artificial sweetness. I declined. You're really doing this, aren't you? She said from the doorway, arms crossed, like I was the one dismantling the marriage. I didn't answer. I just kept packing. Truth is, I'd started emotionally unpacking from her long before I ever reached for the suitcase. The moment she began treating me like furniture, useful, silent, and taken for granted, I started building my own exit. What most people don't realize is that the loudest breakups don't happen with slamming doors and shattered glass. They happen quietly, in the slow erosion of intimacy. In the thousand small ways someone tells you they no longer see you. That night on the rooftop was just the final confirmation. By the third day, the house felt different. Less like a home, more like a showroom of expensive things that didn't mean anything anymore. She tried one more time, this time with tears. I was just angry, Eli. I didn't mean what I said. But that's the thing about truth. It tends to sneak out when we're angry. And hers had sprinted out in heels. You know, I said, for years I've been quietly supporting you, holding space for your ambition, sacrificing parts of myself so you could shine. And you turned around and told the world I was nothing. She wiped her eyes, but didn't deny it. You didn't just insult me, I continued. You erased me, and then expected me to stay grateful for the privilege. A long silence. You used to be proud of me, I said softly. I still am, she whispered, voice trembling. I shook my head. No, you're proud of what I do for you, not who I am. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. I'll be out by the weekend, I said. I'll have a lawyer send over the paperwork. What are you trying to prove, Eli? She asked, desperate now. That you don't need me? I looked her in the eye. No, I said. That I never did. It was a Tuesday morning when she showed up at my office unannounced. I was meeting with a new client, a clean energy startup that had reached out after hearing I was back in the consulting game. Word had gotten around fast. That tends to happen when the quiet husband turns out to be the one with the real leverage. When the meeting ended, my receptionist looked uneasy. Your wife's here, she said. Ex-wife? I corrected gently. Madeline stood in the lobby, dressed in a tailored cream blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent back, when I was funding her. She smiled like she hadn't burned the house down. Eli, she said, we need to talk. I led her into the conference room. She looked around like it hurt to realize I'd built something again, without her. You're doing well, she said. I always was, I replied. You just stopped seeing it. She ignored the jab and sat down. I've been thinking a lot. About us. About what happened. I made mistakes. Big ones. I didn't say anything. I let success get to my head. I stopped showing appreciation. She paused, waiting for me to soften. I want to fix this. I tilted my head. You want to fix this because the investors are pulling out. Her face fell. Rachel told me. I continued. You tried to have her removed from your New York pitch trip. Said she was overstepping. She was, Madeline snapped, then caught herself. I mean, she was confused. That money was a gift, not a promotion. No, I said. It was a signal that the people who actually contribute should be recognized, not manipulated. She leaned forward. You're not being fair. No, I said. I'm just being done. Her voice cracked. Eli, you loved me. I did, I said. I loved you so much I forgot to love myself. I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. You said I was nothing without you. But what you didn't realize was that I built everything in your shadow. Quietly, carefully. While you chased cameras and conferences, I built foundations. She rose slowly. So what? This is revenge? No, I said, turning to face her. This is reality. I reached into a folder and pulled out a document. I handed it to her. She scanned it, frowning. This is an acquisition offer. I nodded. For your company. From one of mine. She stared at me, blinking. You're trying to buy my company? I already did. Or, rather, one of my holding companies did. 6 months ago. Her mouth dropped open. You never noticed the change in vendor names? The new board advisor? The silent partners on your latest funding round? They're all mine. Madeline, you've been operating under my umbrella for half a year. Her legs gave slightly, and she sat down. I kept going. You told people I was nothing without you. But the truth is, you were propped up by me. Every step of the way. And I'm not here to take it back. I'm here to close the loop. I placed a second document beside her. Your severance package. Generous. Clean. You walk away with your dignity intact. But the company? It's mine now. She looked up at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes in years. Not anger. Not entitlement. Just fear. You really planned all this, she whispered. No, I said. You did. The moment you decided I wasn't enough. I walked her out, one step ahead, like I always had been. She didn't say goodbye. 2 weeks later, the story hit the press. A quiet acquisition. Founder steps down to pursue other passions. Internally, people knew the truth. And the ones who mattered? They stayed. Rachel took over operations. I gave her equity. Madeline. She vanished from the headlines. I didn't celebrate. No champagne. No gloating. Instead, I went home to my quiet apartment. Sat on the balcony with a beer and my phone buzzing with congratulations I didn't need. I opened my notes app and wrote one sentence. I was never nothing. I was just waiting for the right moment to remind her. The truth is, some men shout. Others wait. And when we finally move, we don't need to scream. We just sign the paperwork, transfer the funds, and walk away while the world watches them fall apart.